I do have to say something that I have observed though, as we close. We've talked for about, well, I know over an hour. And do you know that not one of those guns went off by themselves? I mean, that's so incredible, man. I heard that all the time when I was growing up. We can't have no guns in the house because, they just go off. What up, though, everybody? It's the Black Prospector coming at you on the Black Prospector Show, where we are all about talking to Black men in their middle age, and I'm saying middle age like over 44, that's trying to live fit, free, and with some vitality. And along with that, why in the world am I talking 44? Now, 44 could be for 44 Magnum. 44 is also that age where you start realizing that you can't go back and holler at the 20-year-old girls without feeling kind of guilty. Now you're looking to be that middle-aged dude. You almost 50 years old. And one thing that comes apart of that when you 50 and you realize, man, I can't tussle with these young bucks like I used to. I might just have to shoot them. And so this is the perfect time, because many times if you were like me, you didn't necessarily grow up around weapons or anything like that. And now you start thinking about protecting yourself. And, if you have a family, wife and kids, now, your size isn't intimidating anymore, because these young dudes like my man T Real on here, they might try to test you. They might just actually try to test you. But we got my brother on here, Damon. He's going to tell you how to pass some of those tests, not just against the young bucks, but even against some of those, we'll just call them terrorists, that may decide to go ahead and catch brothers slipping when they out and about. But with all that, I'm saying we're going to be talking about Black folks being armed today. We're going to talk about weapons. And really, this show came about out of a hot debate that actually started from, number one, talking about the shooting in Texas, and which even led back to conversations about the shooting in Buffalo. And T Real was just asking, matter of fact, let me go back even further. We have a Black Wall Street group, and we just, all of us brothers in there, talking about investments, stocks, etc., just helping each other out. So I encourage more Black men to get together, create a group, and give each other advice, because as I always say, white men will tell you about what they do with their wife at night in the bedroom. They'll tell you about anything else, but they won't tell you how they make their money. And so we're trying to help each other out with that. And that ended up getting into a discussion about what happened with these shootings, with weapons, Black men being armed. And, T Real asked some really good questions, being kind of the younger one in the group. And, certainly we have an expert here in Damon, and the dialogue was hot and heavy. I'm like, we just got to do a show on this, because I'm kind of in the middle. I started out not being really a big one with guns, especially because my oldest son, he was between my house and between my house and between his mom's house. And so I was like, what, if I have a gun somewhere where it worked on me to say, my parents said, hey, it's right there, you better not touch it. Okay, that was cool. About the most I do is reach in the closet, like, yep, it's still there. I did that. I know somebody else on here probably did a little bit more, but that was enough for me. And I felt my son, I didn't, last thing, especially for my single dads out there, you don't want anything happening with your kid on your watch. And so I ended up being one that pulled back when it came to guns and weapons until I got older in life. And, I'll just say this, and I'm gonna throw it over to these guys. The turning point was one night when my wife woke me up, and she thought she left the light on, but it was in the middle of the night, and she's telling me somebody's downstairs. And so I'm looking, I get up, and all I can do is just grab the baseball bat that I had on the side of the bed, and I'm looking like Fred G. Sanford walking down, with a bat, and she's behind me. My kids were in their room, and then turned out, false alarm. But that was a real sobering moment for me, because it hit me that regardless of whatever my stance may be on carrying a weapon or just having a weapon in the house and worried about the kids, now what kind of protector am I for my family that I got to come downstairs hoping I can swing a bat? And I'm pretty good at baseball, and I know that with that one swing, you're only getting one in. And I know that bat is nothing to go against what most people have when they go up inside somebody's house, especially when they know they're home. So with that was kind of my introduction of moving away from the why do you need a gun in the house. So That's my story, and I'm just throwing that out there so you know my leanings. But first, I'm going to let T Real, since he got it started. And y'all know, you've watched other videos. I'm sure they'll be linked up here when we get done. You've seen T Real on some of the other videos. And also, my brother Damon has been on Every Black Man Has a Story. So you can hear his whole story. But just real quick, gentlemen, and then I just want to throw out the question to get everything started. But if you just want to give a quick intro for yourself, T Real, you can go ahead and start. And then Damon, if you can go ahead and give you an intro, and then I'll throw out the first question, you guys.
Yes, sir.
Sure. So T Real in Tampa, Florida. Obviously, I don't claim anything Florida because I have two different Michigan associated pictures behind me. Detroit. But I'm 24, married, no kids, and not a carrier or licensed carrier currently.
And go ahead, Damon.
Damon Lindsay here. I retired from the military actually 4 years ago last week. Retired Sergeant Major. Been in the firearms from an early age, and of course got quite a bit of firearms training in the military. Been licensed to carry in quite a few different states since 1998. Currently licensed here in Tennessee with a lifetime carry permit. And all through the year, I spend quite a bit of time in classes, training with tactical riflemen, Instructor Z, Hilltop Firearms Training Academy, different places, just to refine my skills, along with my son, and we training together a lot. And not to get off topic, but just the firearm side is just one aspect of the tools. As Devin mentioned earlier, about somebody trying you or whatever else, you got to have your other skills as a warrior too as well. So every week we're training in Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Uh-oh, looks like you froze. Let's see if you come back. Let's see if you come back. Oh, he's frozen. He is frozen. Looks like you definitely get the first question by default then. Well, until he comes back, I'm going to go ahead and throw out. Yep. Oh, there you go. Now you're coming back.
Yeah, you're back.
So the last thing we heard from you was, fine-tuning your other skills. So you do Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you and your son.
Oh, yeah. So it's not just firearms. That's just a tool. You have to have, different tools for the situation. You don't want to go straight to a firearm and deadly force when really you should be trying to de-escalate, avoid the situation or whatever else. Sometimes you can't avoid it. And if you have more tools available, then, maybe other things can apply to situations. The worst thing you can do is apply the wrong tool for the job. You go apply deadly force with something that was a road rage incident with somebody unarmed, and now you saying you felt your life was in danger, which we see quite a bit here in America now on TV, where it could have just been a fist fight, which I don't recommend. It's just easier to, ignore it, drive off. But next thing you know, what was going to be a fist fight, one person pulls out a firearm, then the other one pulls out a firearm as well. And speaking of firearms, Damon Jr. is trying to join us too.
Yes, he just entered the building. Oh man, I know I'm not just gonna let both of y'all double team up on T Real. Now that'd be wrong.
Oh yeah,
y'all brothers always be trying to give a beat down. Be right.
Oh, yeah. He was flanking him.
But you know what, man? For real, I think if there's anything that has kind of been reflective of the Black community, and I'll say, brothers, I'm going back to, going back to the old Detroit days of going down on Belle Isle. When you look back at that Generation X, everybody talks about getting into a fight, and then, we fought, we took a break, and then we fought some more. Now, and we came along right at that turn, especially when we was out doing, we were out observing, not that we were doing, we were out observing street racing, where it was like, dudes stop fighting if they beefing over money. Next thing it was tow, tow, tow. And it's like Boys in the Hood when, you just everybody running to the car and getting out, because there was nothing in between anymore. Nothing between that harsh word. Now everybody wanted to start shooting. But Damon Jr., if you want to go ahead and give an introduction, I guess brother don't want to be on camera, but that's all right, man. That's all right. We got enough entertainment for the people on the camera, but feel free, man. Give a quick intro about yourself.
You might be muted.
Let me see if he's muted. Nope, doesn't look like he's muted on my end.
Oh, no, he says he can join, but he'll be muted. So he's just, he's on another call. So that's why.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Sorry about that.
All
I just read the text message. He's upstairs. Cool. I'm downstairs in the gun room. All right. As you can see.
In the gun. So I am going to kick this off and really, again, y'all are just having an opportunity to really kind of listen in to the discussion that went on online. So in our group. So Terrell, here is the statement that you made. And I'm going to start it out. I want you to, this is your position, explain it, and then Damon, feel free to give a rebuttal. We were talking about the guns, gun investments, blah, blah, blah. And Terrell, you said that you had been on the side for years to, I'm paraphrasing, to just pretty much take the guns unless somebody's on duty, like policemen, military, or to make them much harder to get with regulations because of the amount of power and the responsibility that people need to have with them. So I think I love that response by you, because I do think that's the general position of many people that may not be big on guns. They look at it as they're just too accessible, too hard to get. But I'm gonna let you elaborate on that, of kind of what was you thinking, what were you thinking when you said that? And then Damon, feel free to go ahead and give your response.
Sure. So a lot of times when the news reports come out that there's this mass shooting, or it may not be, as mass, right? But, well, how did he get the gun? How did he get ownership? And then he went through all of this, how did he, for example, during riots, right? Gentleman drives from one state, Wisconsin or so, and drives all the way over, and he has these, all this itinerary and all of that. How did he get a hold of it, especially at certain ages? So my position traditionally, just at the surface level, not really digging past that, is how about we go ahead and start removing access to, those types of weapons or the firearms in general from civilians. If you're not on active duty, why do you need them when they're causing a lot of challenges from mass to everyday life for years? So what is the point? That's been my stance for a few years.
All right. So you made a couple different comments. I'll go ahead and address it if that's all right, Devin. Okay. First, you got to look at some actual numbers here instead of emotions. So if anything, a handgun, if you look at numbers, you have more people are shot and killed by a handgun than an AR-15 that you're referring to. And you can look this up on multiple sources. AR-15s, when you look at the number of firearms, which numbers I'm seeing is estimates between 3 and 400 million firearms. The numbers are now there. They believe that there are more firearms in the U.S. than people. Okay, and you look in between. I've heard between 14, 16 million AR-15s. These are civilian purchase. We're not talking about the military. Civilian purchase firearms, and that's not a very large number when you look at incidents. When what they call a mass shooting. Now, that's a whole nother conversation. We start talking about what is a mass shooting. Generally, with conversations like this, I like to stick with the closest we can get to facts, which is like FBI statistics, because the news media will say 2 or more. The FBI has a number they use. So since most people don't even know what or they need to at least be able to agree what is a mass shooting to even get these kind of numbers, I generally try to stay with what the FBI considers it. Honestly, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but is not two or more like the media off their first shoot. You don't hear terms, oh, there's already been like 200 and something mass shootings here in America this year. But even when they try to use that number, again, you're still talking about AR-15, a very small percentage of it. Now, when you talk about need, honestly, I don't even know why that's a topic with the gun debate. Again, you're talking about a weapon that's not nearly used as much as other firearms. And what here in America, when you start talking about the Second Amendment, a constitutionally protected right, why is there even a discussion about what someone needs? And it's not coming from people that are firearm experts, know a whole lot about firearms. And I'm not saying that, to you, but when you got the president of the United States calling it an AR-14, okay, all right, and these weapons of mass destruction and all this other garbage they're saying, that, the terminology, everything is all, civilians, not civilians, but the average citizen thinks that these things are fully automatic practically. And I mean, just the way the media has, really just been on assault against firearms and, pushing this agenda. I would be even if I wasn't someone that had, a couple firearms, I'd be a little leery of buying into that, because when you start looking at the numbers yourself and you see that this isn't true, hey, why are they telling me this then? You know what I'm saying? I would be a little suspicious. Well, why does every time there's a mass shooting, as they call it, and, and it's an AR-15, why for the next 3-4 days is CNN constantly talking about gun control? And then there's a bill right there that's coming through, sponsored by some Democrat, and, everything about it has a lot of times nothing to do with the weapon that the person used. So, for example, when I mentioned to you about the bump stocks, okay, GOA did a FOIA request, the Freedom of Information Act, on the results of the shooter in Las Vegas, one that fired from the hotel, right? So you guys remember, everybody's talking about bump stocks, and they eventually got banned. It didn't go through Congress like our laws are supposed to, and people's privately owned property was deemed illegal, something they purchased.
Just right? real quick, what's a bump stock for the folks who don't know?
Bump stock is a device that you could put on an AR-15, and it slides. They refer to bump stocks or slide fire stocks. And all it does is if you put pressure forward moving, this goes like this. And basically it resets the trigger and allows manipulation of the trigger faster. The same thing can be done with a rubber band and your belt loop, right? But you have to fire it from the hip to do that. And you can fire any AR-15, any semi-automatic, your Mac 90s or civilian AK-47. You can do it with those too, but it's not accurate. But for it to make the same kind of noise, basically is what it's doing, and waste of ammo. You can do it with a rubber band, you can do it with your belt loop. It takes a little practice, but that's basically the concept of what a slide fire or bump stock does. So there were bump stocks in that room, but when the investigation was complete, he didn't use any of them. So what was the point of banning bump stocks? At the end of the day, he didn't use them. Now, I believe what he did use, he either modified it or he used some form of like I don't even think the FRT trigger was out then, but it wasn't. The end result was he didn't use a bump stock. He had bump stocks, they weren't used, and then our government, in my opinion, did an unconstitutional ban. It's the Ninth Circuit in my district here, Tennessee, up in Ohio, the federal district overturned it. So now I'm not saying, somebody go out and get a bump stock now, or even in this district, because nobody wants to be the case study for it, but it was ruled unconstitutional. And that law for them to make, would stand. But, who wants to be the case study and then go show, hey, I got a bump stock and start making YouTube videos because the Ninth Circuit, Ninth District or whatever, ruled in 2021 that, government couldn't do that. So.
Well,
That's my point with that.
so let me go back to something you said, and I'm going to play the, again, the advocate for, those who will be asking these types of questions. So are you saying that because it is a constitutional right, we should not be worried about the need? So like if the question is, why does the average civilian need it? Are you saying that need isn't even relevant to the conversation? Because I think that's probably
100%.
most people thing is that, why does the average civilian need such a high powered weapon?
I'm really, saying it's high powered, again, to me, is dangerous. And because once you start ruling a firearm like that as it's not needed or whatever, now we're talking about, 5.56 millimeter or 223 Remington caliber. That is a, high power 22, basically. All right, 223. Now, as I mentioned in the discussion we had, my M1 Garand right there, almost in the middle next to my AR-10, right? Both of those shoot, way more powerful rounds. That M1 Garand right there shoots a 30-06. That's the same, that was a battle rifle our grandfather carried in World War II. It is semi-automatic. And I could get a 30-06 out in the 5.56 compared if y'all want, to show you the difference. Actually, I think I will. Give me 1 sec, okay?
All right. And I'm going to just elaborate real quick on that term high powered, because I think it is, we all kind of car people. I think it's probably something good. If we talk about what's high powered and what people think is high powered, if you look at a Lamborghini or Ferrari or a Corvette, it's like, oh, this is high powered. But then you could look at something like, I don't know, we'll say a Challenger Hellcat or a Charger, a big 4-door sedan. Like when it comes to playing games with insurance companies that they used to do back in the day, it's like, oh, well, this is a sedan. It must not be as dangerous as one of those sports cars. Well, it could still be just as dangerous as a sports car. You just look at it and you say, oh, well, because it's a big sedan, it's not the same. But okay, I was just kind of explaining high powered on, in the car world. We can look at two cars and say, oh, the Lamborghini or the Ferrari, that's high powered. But then we can look at a Hellcat Charger or Challenger or something and make an assumption like, oh, well, that's much safer, but yet that's got 800 horsepower as well. So, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So here we go. 30-06 goes to this is the cartridges, and this is actual a clip, a true clip, not a magazine, because it's designed to be inserted on the clip. These cartridges, 30-06 into the M1 Garand. These are your stripper clips, okay, which you use in conjunction with a speed loader. You can load them up into your say 30-round mag for an AR-15. I want you to look at the difference in the size of these rounds here. This is a 55 grain. All right. This is like, I want to say 136. I have to look on the box. But you notice the difference?
Yeah.
So we've never heard anybody talking about this high power. This is a high powered round. Okay. I'm sure we all heard of 30-06s for deer hunters, things like that. They've used it for sniping in the past, Vietnam era. We say with the Remington or Winchester 70, 30-06 Carlos Halfcock. Quite a few people have been killed by 30-06. Okay, so just goes to show that the argument that this round is so devastating that no one needs it. Well, okay, that's pretty dangerous to go down that road, because now you're taking one of the calibers here that's kind of, in my opinion, on the lower end. Your AK-47s or the Mac 90, the civilian version of them, and we go on and on and on of semi-automatic or firearms and semi-automatic with larger calibers of ammunition. Well, what about them? Now you're going to be looking to ban them as well, because why are you picking a 55 grain? It does the same thing. You cannot shoot this any faster than you can shoot this one here. So what's the difference? See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So this conversation, to give the viewers perspective as well, is kind of in retrospect. A few days ago, those were my immediate questions. And then since conversations via text, I've come to go ahead and learn and understand and lean more towards what we'll probably get into later on what what are some practices or things that can be in place to improve um, the amount of or to decrease the amount of deaths when it comes to gun violence. So my goal in just conversation is how can we lower the amount of deaths via gun violence in general?
Can
So,
I? Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead and finish that thought. And I want to throw something in with that.
sure. So, I mean, this conversation is even way past just mass shootings, but even years and years ago. And well, um, how do certain weapons or the amount of weapons get into urban and black communities, and what was the history on that, all of that stuff, right? But when we see that things have been maybe a problem for years and years to come, um, what are some quick things that we can go ahead and do to get rid of it? As it seems like there's a conversation back and forth for a long time on what are some resolutions. My quick resolution was, can we just get them all off the street?
And
Well,
Mhm.
Hey guys,
I'll,
I'm sorry. But to answer your question,
oh,
honestly, I think it's not, it wouldn't work that way. Like, I don't think you could ever really get guns off the street just because of how many Americans are used to having guns. Like, if you try to come for example, the white communities, like you try to take guns out of there, they're not going for it. Like, I know so many of them, you hear it every day in Tennessee. Oh, if they try to come for the guns, I'm shooting it out, like all that. Like, there's so many people that were raised around weapons to where they'd be too uncomfortable in a everyday life. And then also to add, I was trying to get my microphone to work, but after just the experience of shooting a lot, a shotgun shell is 100 times more devastating than a 5.56 round. The ones that they're doing all the mass shootings and all that with, the AR-15s and all that, they're way, honestly, in my opinion, less dangerous than a pistol. Um, and all that, just because of you can ask my dad, they literally will zip through someone. Like, if someone gets shot with an AR-15, it's gonna fly through. The bullet's not even most likely gonna get stuck in the person or nothing. It's gonna fly straight through them. You feel me? A shotgun will literally blow a hole the size of your head into someone. You feel me? But no one's talking about shotguns. It's just AR-15s, bump stocks, and all that. So I personally feel like all the mass shootings are for a reason. I've always said that. I always felt like they were from the government. I feel like they're planning it. If you look at the time frame of them, they always happen literally like every 4 years. It's always some elementary school in Texas or somewhere in some little county that you never hear about until the mass shooting. It's just there's too much. If you really look into it, I don't think it's the guns that's the problem. You feel me? Because there's so many citizens that have guns. It's always some very weird random situation that comes out of nowhere right around the time where you would figure that some type of gun control would happen whenever a new president gets in office or something like that. And that's just something I personally noticed on my own. So I don't know, just being a gun owner, I have pretty much every single caliber, and I pretty much I don't know, I've seen the effects of all of them, and the AR-15 is definitely not the most dangerous. Honestly, a shotgun is, or one of those little old revolvers that take huge bullets. But I don't know what they're trying to do right now. It's just obvious they're just trying to get certain weapons off the street. But I don't think AR-15s and stuff like that are honestly the problem.
So
man, look, you coming in here with your tinfoil kufi on, sitting up there talking about a conspiracy. But let me chime in real quick, and then T-Rail, I want to put it back on you because Damon Jr., that was a great point, and I'm going to put this back up on the screen because T-Rail, you touched on it. And I think this is again the argument that people will have of why these things need to be taken off the street. They would say, look, David, can you go on mute?
I'm right here.
All right.
Asking the question.
Yeah. Because I couldn't hardly hear. All right. So the thing is, if you notice, here's a picture now. Of course, you know, this is going back to Cube's old days, back when, you know, I don't know if he's hanging with Cypress Hill. I don't know who that is there, but this is exactly the image that was put before the Black community, especially if we go back to the late 80s, early 90s, around Ice Cube St. Ides times, of these are those dangerous weapons that all those gangbangers are using, those AK-47s, those Uzis. And then it even got adopted by the Black community itself, because, you know, here it is, you had people running around with some doggone Uzi gold chains, and I think there was a rapper, there you go, Lil Uzi Vert. I mean, it became adopted by the community. But then, Damon Jr., as you chimed in, look, it's been stuff out there for the longest time anyway. And it's like now the AR-15 is just the gun of the month that now they all want to go after. We've seen this happen in the past. And y'all know I brought it up in the group. You know, we go back 30 years ago, that was used to set up a crime bill a few years later that the Clintons would then come in and impose, that the Black community that was supposed to trying to be quote unquote protected from everybody. Then you got Black men being sent to prison left and right like water, because they was getting caught with a little bit of everything, weapons included. And it was like, well, we're doing this to protect y'all. So T-Real, I'm gonna put it back on you. You know, I mean, do we throw the baby out with the bathwater? Do you think that should we just, and I know you said, you know, you've kind of been changing since, you know, the dialogue has been going on, but let's pretend like you still, man, I'm sick of all these guns. You're a young man still in your 20s. Do you still, you know, or would your argument lean toward, or in a few weeks ago, whatever, was it still leaning toward, look, we still need to get these things taken out of the community because of how dangerous they are, even to our people?
That would be correct. And here's how I look at it, because I don't want to, in this conversation, I don't want to just focus on a certain type of gun, a certain caliber. I'm saying in general, right? Which could be even more like, whoa, what is he doing? Right. But there's two ends of the spectrum. Both of them can be very extreme. Everybody should have one. Everybody should use it, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the other side where it's nobody should have them. So I like to not take off either side. I don't want to go ahead and remove anyone from the table. Let's start going further and further down the middle so we can go ahead and come up with a decision or some good practices from there. Again, I see the face. I see his face. So,
hey, what country are you talking about? Though? That's what I'm wondering. Like, we're still talking about the U.S., you know, with a constitution, and I'll let you continue. Go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
So, in that, right, when you're going to go ahead and have the conversation, just not removing either just off the table, and you'll be able to go ahead and start getting closer and closer. At the same time, my original point is also, even if we don't get rid of them, can we make them more difficult to get a hold of amongst common population, right?
So
I'm sorry. I don't think it'll really make a difference, because people will still find a way to get it. Like,
pause.
Same way they get anything.
Now, I don't disagree with people will still get them, but will it decrease the amount of people that still get them? Was the point, right? And that's not neither here nor there as far as I know the black market or people just whatever. Like, I'm not doing that. But again, to decrease, not to get rid of completely, but can we decrease? Is that a good option?
No.
To do that? Okay.
Because we're talking about, one, our government is not supposed to be doing anything to infringe upon that right. Okay, our Constitution is to limit the power of the government.
Of the government.
Okay, right. And they have clear limits of what they're allowed to do. And it shouldn't even be again, a part of the conversation about infringing, you know, that little.
It's like taking away your right to religion, basically.
Right. I mean, you know, that's just common among the gun control talk that we've allowed to happen. You know, when you start talking about infringing and losing a little bit of freedom, you know, for security and all these other things in the conversation, like, hey, this is still the United States. You know, it's not the government's job to make it more difficult for me, a law-abiding citizen, or you all that are law-abiding citizens, should make it more difficult for you to exercise a constitutionally protected right?
If you think
Why is
about
that
it,
even part of the conversation?
if you think about it, they already have stuff like that imposed right now. They got, you know, if you're a felon, you can't buy a firearm. You feel me? So that was a lot of people's arguments. You know, why are all these felons getting firearms? Blah blah blah. They're getting them illegally. They're not buying them in the stores. You feel me? And it's not the felons that are doing the school shootings. You feel
That's true.
So, I honestly don't think it'll make a difference. Like, because I can tell you right now, well, obviously between all of us, but if they took a whole bunch of guns, I'm gonna be on the black market, literally buying weapons. I'm not gonna sit here and just go unprotected my whole life and be uncomfortable after I've been around weapons my whole life. You feel me? So I don't know. Like, there's been situations as a kid where someone literally tried to kick the door in. You feel me? Well, my parents weren't home and it was just me, Brittany, and Jalen. Like, when you think about situations like that, you wish you had a gun, you know? You're not going to want to, oh, let me go get the baseball bat. Like, no, you're going to want a gun when someone's trying to harm you. They're physically coming in the house to harm you. So I don't think taking or limiting someone's amendment and their actual born right as a U.S. citizen is going to really make a difference because, like I said, if someone wants something, they'll get it. People that want weed, they find a way to get it. People that want any drug, they find a way to get it. So if someone wants to do a mass shooting, guess what? They're gonna find a way to get a rifle. You feel me? I don't think it's the right that's the problem.
That's why I use the example of your mother, Terrell, because that would be a good example of the local government infringing on a right, and they put all these stipulations, okay, on the right for her to purchase a firearm, and it could have potentially been deadly for your household. Do you agree with that? You know, your mother woke up at 1 a.m.
Can you share that story? Yeah.
Are you familiar with that story, Terrell?
Not until you told it, not that part.
Really? We're giving out family secrets up on here.
I actually was never familiar, but I knew the gun he was talking about because I used to go and look. I never did anything crazy or nothing with it, but I knew where it was, like you said. Check, make sure you know where it is, all of that stuff. But yeah, go ahead.
See, that was a legally purchased firearm that I purchased in North Carolina. Now, they do have a permit system in North Carolina. I had to go through that process, but the permit system, once I got out the Marine Corps and went to Michigan, was even more stringent. So I had to go register firearms already owned. And affidavits, I had to take several days off to go through this process. I'm talking about they'll get fingerprinted, all kind of background checks for guns that I already own. Now, I just made sure I didn't go take them to the police station because they would have confiscated them until I got all that paperwork squared away. And again, these are guns I bought with my money and brought into the state when I got out the military. Okay, so one of those firearms afterwards, that after I went through that whole nut roll, you know, where they make every single resident of Detroit go to 1,300 Bovie into like the 4th floor, and those couple little people at the desk do a firearm safety inspection. You know, so if you want a handgun, if you want to go to a gun store and buy one in Detroit or in Michigan, you know, you have to go apply for the permits. You have to take a day off work, go to 1,300 Bovie right downtown Detroit, say, hey, I want a pistol purchase permit. Then you had 10 days to go buy a firearm or something, 2 weeks, whatever. And then once the dealer put the information in there and gave you the firearm, then you had like 10 days to bring it back for a safety inspection, right? All of that for a firearm, right? But that's a whole nother conversation. Now, I had to already go through that for a firearm I already owned. And in addition to that, when I gave it to your mother and father, because they were looking for a firearm, it's one of the ones I was you know, wanted to upgrade to something different, then that process would have required a 3rd day of work for your mother to take off to go register this firearm I just got done going through that process with like 2-3 months earlier, right? So by the 3rd day, she couldn't take off work and didn't never make it back there to register it the way they wanted it done. You know, 3 days off of work to register a registered firearm. And shortly after that, someone attempted to break into your home. So your mom wakes up at 1 a.m. There's an armed relate coming through. She's screaming, and your dad grabs the gun that I gave them, right? Guy takes off. Now, if your mother had went through that process and say she gave it back to me until she could go finish a third day, then, I don't know, maybe you'd be here today, maybe not. I'm glad she had access to a firearm. And so in a sense, she had to break the law to have a firearm there. But technically, she had to break the law because, your mother's a law-abiding citizen and your dad, yet that process was such a pain in the butt. She had to take off so much time from work. They made it such a pain and difficult for the people that really needed it that, your life and your parents' life was in danger. And that's why your mother was like, we moving to Florida. We getting out of here. We ain't staying there no more. And then, so she takes the same firearm to Florida and she's perfectly legit. No questions asked, no nothing. That's her personal property. And that's the end of it. There's nothing else for her to do. So what good did all that do in Michigan? All those making it difficult. It didn't make it a bit more difficult for that criminal that probably coming through your window that night.
Point of saying if they want them, that's my whole point of saying if they want them, they're gonna get them, regardless. And I started laughing midway through you talking because I realized how many guns you had on the table behind you. Like his screen was blurry at first, and it just noticed there's like 30 guns on that table right now.
Yeah, I hope YouTube don't take this video down. They just might. They just might. But you know what? I think I'm gonna try to segue because I know we're gonna be limited on time. I'm so glad you mentioned that story because T-Real, if you didn't know that story, I think that actually kind of can move us into another part of this discussion. We remember that story because that was a pivotal story on why you are sitting where you are at today. That was, we call that, I go back to Dr. Harry Edwards when he talks about the unforgiving moment. That was really an unforgiving moment in a way, because whoever was coming through y'all window, I guess, as I said, even when I was worried somebody was coming in, man, Damon Jr., why you got to crack on us old dudes coming down the stairs with a baseball bat? I was telling that story before you got on because that was me. But if in that case, when somebody's coming in your house that late and they know you probably at home, yes, that's a jacked up situation. And so, your mom was like, we out of here. And I mean, y'all got out with the quickness. And I think y'all had a Disney World trip. I mean, y'all were gone. And so it's interesting that you didn't really seem to know all that was behind that story, which leads me into some of the gap that I think we have in the Black community today. And actually, if I may, T-Real, let me go to Damon on this question, Damon Sr. in this case. I want to know, because there seems to be something, and let's back up even for our audience. There seems to be something missing with Black men, I'm going to say born after 1970, our Gen X Black men, that we went from, I was much older when I learned about the history of Black men and guns. Mm-hmm. If you would have asked me, I would have thought we always never, Martin Luther King, nonviolent. We wouldn't have weapons. That was only those Black Panther guys. Shout out to John. Y'all check out the video. Every Black man has a story. Cobra John, you hear about his Black Panther experiences. And John actually corroborates what I think, Damon, you might have said it earlier. John said in the conversation, I don't think he said it on the recording, but John said, look, they're never going to come get our weapons. We'd end up giving them up voluntarily, but they'd never come get them because he said, America's not about that life. They already know what had happened if they tried to come and confiscate everybody, because he remembers what they were trying to do in the late 60s. But to go back, Damon, can you give us some history of Black men? And it hasn't always been peace and nonviolence, because I heard Martin Luther King was strapped. So tell us about that.
I guess they denied his application. Historically, I just heard through some reading that he applied for a carry permit and was denied because it wasn't very common. As we discussed in the past, the history of gun control is racist. And I think earlier on, Black people knew that, because right after the Civil War, with everything that was going on, still, of course, wasn't equal rights, Jim Crow, and all that kind of stuff going on. Up until more recently, I think Black people, your folks that was in the country always had guns and stuff anyway. And Black folks back then knew that they were, they didn't want them to have firearms. So like here in Tennessee, they made a law, I can't remember the name of the exact firearm, but they said the only pistol you can own is this certain model, right? This is like in the late 1800s, early 1900s or something. I want to say late 1800s, and that you could only own this certain type of pistol. Well, thing about it was that type of pistol was one that, as a part of surrender by the Confederacy and all that stuff, they got like veteran status or whatever else. Well, I heard one of those criteria, they were allowed to keep those pistols. And the only other people that could afford them were rich white folks. So automatically you had your Confederates and rich white folks with handguns at the time. Right. So eventually it got overturned. I actually wrote about it. It's very interesting. I learned it through the NRA, doing some research about the racist history of gun control. But so I think Black people were a little more keen on it then and knew they had to protect themselves. They couldn't depend on the law, and then I say you tie in the breakdown of the family structure with so many Black families being, one just a mother in the household running stuff and all, and you typically just don't hear of many Black women, that just came up with firearms and all into it and stuff, and I think that's carried on over to the kids too.
What's very crazy that you bring that up is, I'm sorry, it's very crazy you bring that up though, because I have noticed personally, just on my own experiences, that a lot of how can I put it, basic, I don't know who's calling me, but like a lot of white women or white girls, they've grown up around guns.
Yes.
A lot of honestly have, like, if you go through Facebook pictures and all that, you see pictures of them shooting at the range or something like that, or just from my experience from talking to them, or something, that they've been around guns before. But I've noticed a lot of Black families haven't, and unless they're military, believe it or not, a lot of military families, they're always around guns, obviously. But I have noticed a lot more white families are around guns, typically like the women and stuff, rather than Black families.
Man, that's the truth, because we did a video talking about weapons. Man, this goes back some years. But I might have it on the channel. I might link up to it, where it was a case in that situation in Michigan where it was this white woman. She was beefing with this Black mother and the daughter. I think they were coming out of a sandwich shop, I don't know, some sandwich shop. And they were getting in the minivan. Yeah. Yep. And the white woman was like pulling out her stuff. I can't remember if the husband had something. So David Jr., that's a great point, because white woman was ready to go. I mean, it was like, all right, well, you won't move, and if it's going to be on, it's going to be on. So you are definitely right. That gap seems to be there. And I never thought until you just said that, even about the separation of the home, that even Black women, we talk about in the mid 60s that basically they got paid to kick the Black man out the house, and they depended on the white government to provide for them. Well, it makes sense. He also became their security as well. Well, if you need us, you just call us. And anybody that grew up in the inner city already knows the police are not there in 5 to 10 minutes. That does not happen. But we gave that up. So let me bring it back around then. What do you think, or do you think that we're so far gone now? Do you think that they will ever, I guess I'll say, quote unquote, let Black men kind of have a movement back toward arming themselves again?
Well, here more recently, especially during the Trump administration, I'm sure you've seen all the articles with NAGA and things like that. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of like Vice and stuff doing news stories about the increased ownership of firearms among the Black community and Black women and things like that, unlike ever before. So, of course, they tied it into Trump, made it political, but we are seeing, at least for my lifetime, a more interest from the Black community in firearms like never before. And I think Black people are kind of waking up, with the okey doke that got pulled again with the crime bill and drugs and stuff, marching, demanding these strict penalties for crack. And then they got to see, white boys get arrested for the same thing with cocaine, a couple grams of cocaine versus a couple grams of crack, and the mandatory minimums and stuff, and how that ravaged neighborhoods where, there are white people I know that, they're older now, but got caught as a kid with what was considered just a user amount of cocaine and didn't even end up with a felony. You know what I'm saying? They got a little record, an arrest, misdemeanor, but it wasn't a felony, so they were able to bounce back from it. But you had mandatory minimums for that same amount of crack. So now that brother is out. He can never own a firearm. Okay, he's got mandatory minimums and all that stuff for $20 worth of black cocaine. You know what I mean? And I think black people are starting to kind of wake up from that and realize that we can't be protected, in our communities by the police with everything going on and with folks getting shot and everything. And they realize, and you hear a few more stories about even black women, engage in neutralizing threats and stuff. You got the sister home by herself with her kids, and a couple years ago, all she had was a high point carbine, but she let loose with it, and they were running up out the house and stuff. And I guess a sister, maybe 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks ago, somebody was shooting with an AR or something. I don't remember what it was, but she shot the gunman. It came out right around the time of the Massachusetts shooting, so you probably hear a lot about it.
Well, I know one of the things that we talked about as well is if we even look back at Black Wall Street, what in the world? And hey, if I know I got a lot of smart people to watch this channel, if y'all have any history, because we threw out the possibility, well, we know that it was said that this was the first example of the government actually dropping a bomb on its own citizens. Yes. Because there were reports that there was a plane overhead that dropped a bomb in that community when the uprising was taking place. Or really, I'm going to say the riot, because that really wasn't an uprising because they got attacked. So they weren't uprising against anything. They got attacked. But we thought about it, was like, knowing that how much black people were armed back then, it couldn't be easy for the white people in the community to come and attack them. And if they were just like, oh, we have nothing to protect ourselves. Could that have been why they had to call in something to drop a bomb? We don't know. If you know that little tidbit in history, we'd be more than happy. Put it down in the comments below. But I think it just goes to show again of really, as far as our community goes, we've always had a history of having a weapon for protection. It just seems like we gave them up when they convinced us that, well, you don't need them because you need to be more worried about y'all killing each other instead of us killing you. How can you sell that argument now when everything we're hearing in the press is, well, now it's somebody else killing us? But T-Real, jump back on in here, man. I know this is still your position, so throw in anything else you want to throw in there.
Correction, I said Massachusetts, Buffalo.
Okay.
Mass shooting, I'm sorry. Well, I said that didn't sound right. Okay.
I mean, it's sad. Like me and my boy was talking one time, when you talk about, even police beatings, it sounded like, which one was that? Which one was that? Was that one? So, I mean, it is sad that we're at that point now.
That's why, yeah, clear that up.
So, I guess when it goes back to now removing the right to bear arms, cool, that's fine. But the question becomes, what do we do to decrease the amount of gun violence, not just mass shootings, but gun violence as a whole? Because again, the goal is for that to decrease. So what do we do? I see you just dropped the link in the chat as well.
Oh no, well, since you already said it now, that was just the link that I was discussing about the black woman shooting somebody with an AR. They had an AR-15 shooting into a crowd. You didn't hear anything about it. So this was 27 May, and a black woman shot and killed a man who fired into a crowd.
Okay.
And we didn't hear about that. That'd be the good guy with a gun, story.
And let me add this part as well. So I'm not a big person or a person that really supports a lot of the media that goes on as well. As a matter of fact, I pretty much I stopped watching the news for the last about 5 years.
No charges
Now,
would be filed against the woman.
so because of that, especially during the last maybe 2.5 years, due to the current climate with illnesses, I don't want to need the account. So
Appreciate that.
I really stopped watching the news because there were a lot of misleading facts and a lot of verbiage that was used that was not fit for the conversation. So I add that context to say that I'm not anti-guns or anti-having the conversations on how we should handle certain situations. And I'm not blind by the fact that I don't trust everything that the mass tries to go ahead and push down our throat. So just wanted to add that context to the viewers and people that may not have known that full context or had that full context. So, Uncle Duck, if you can go ahead and the original question, what do we do to decrease the amount of gun violence as a whole?
As in our chat that I mentioned, the question we should really be asking is why are 18,000 plus gun laws on the books? Why aren't they being enforced? Now I use that number because let's say 14 or 18,000 in the early 80s when Reagan got shot, that he made a comment about none of those stopped him from being shot. And I believe he was shot with like a 22, right? And he said he's like 14,000 or 18,000 gun laws on the books, and none of them stopped, that guy from shooting him with a 22. Okay. So when I really tried to look up for some other research I was doing for school, how many gun laws, I couldn't find a concrete number. So I just went off of what that last number from Reagan in the 80s about how many gun laws were on the books. So the questions we need to be asked is, why aren't they being enforced? Okay, when the paperwork I showed you that I sent to one of the senators with actual numbers, I had the sources on that that document I uploaded. Why do you have tens of thousands of denials for background checks, right? That's what we were told years ago, that, hey, government's not spying on you buying firearms. They won't keep record of it. They won't know exactly who has what, but we just, for the kids to be safe, make sure felons aren't buying firearms. We're going to do a background check, right? So background checks goes through, they deny it, right? And then the number you saw, that little double-digit number, right? That was less than 40 out of all them tens of thousands of background check denials by people that shouldn't have even attempted to buy firearms. They're a felon, Waltenberg Agreement, domestic things like that they aren't allowed to have a firearm. They still tried to anyway, and they were denied. So I will say, okay, that part stopped it, right? But then like 14 people, they follow up written arrest. So one, what is the purpose of this system that they're utilizing to run these checks? Then if a criminal tries to buy a firearm, he gets denied and they don't do anything about it, right? But then they worried about, my shoulder brace on an AR pistol, versus a stock and all these other ridiculous laws. So again, why aren't we, here's a guy that broke the law, that broke the law on the books right now, and you didn't do anything about it. This was somebody clearly seeking a firearm that wasn't legally able to supposed to purchase one, and got caught, and they do nothing about it. Tens of thousands of it. Like I made the comment about people, family members, whatever, know somebody to have a firearm, yet they're not supposed to have one, right? I've seen family put that on social media, and I'm sitting like, man, you got a felony, and you sitting up here posting that mess on social media and everything. You know what? Why? Because nothing happens, right? Unless they're part of something bigger investigation later on, or they directly target them. But here are current laws right there. So let's say family member so and so gets stopped, right? They don't follow up, don't do anything to him. So what does he do? He's just not going to get a firearm? No, he gets it off the street. Rarely somebody that's stupid anyway. Well, apparently there are tens of thousands of them that are that stupid that still go try to buy one with a felony, right? Legally, but then we know they get them anyway. But then they get them off the street. But you already got evidence here now that they tried to buy a firearm. Here's their signature, everything else, copy of their ID, and then got denied. And then you don't do anything to them. Wonder how can we keep firearms away from criminals? Or then I'm told that, hey, as a law-abiding citizen, that we need to make it harder for me to keep the guns out of the hands of criminals. No, you need to enforce the laws that you already have and quit trying to restrict mine and make it harder for me.
If I can, let me share my screen real quick, because I just looked up something interesting while you were talking, and maybe you can address this. And I'm going to dig into this a little bit more when we're done as well. But I just really, quickly looked up the history of gun laws right here, timeline of major gun control laws in America. Looks like it goes back into starting 1791, which, goes back to when really the Bill of Rights were ratified. But then everything stayed kind of cool until 1934. Mm-hmm. And then 1938. And then, but it seems like, and here's where I joined definitely Damon Jr., because I said I was always interested and fascinated by the fact that assassination seemed to stop after Robert F. Kennedy was killed. All of a sudden, for like over a 10-year span in this country, people, legislators or civil rights people had to worry about being taken out. But all of a sudden, it just ended. And then it's interesting that everything was cool for almost 20 years until 1986. And then you sparked it when you actually said about Reagan in the 90s, because that's when I remember the Brady Bill. That was my first intro into, we got to do something about these weapons. Why do you think it is that America on one end has, well, I guess I'll ask it this way. Why is this a political issue? Because I'm skeptical about anything that's a political issue. Because I'm sure that those who are guarding the Democrats that are going into a building, put it like this, let's go back to what happened in was it January 9th? Did they want those guards armed when all those supposed Trump people came in? Did they want those guards armed to protect them? Mm-hmm. So why do you think America seems to have such a problem with not enforcing the laws it already has on the book? What do you think the end game is? Because let's go about 15 more minutes, because I want to get to one more thing. But what do you think the end game is to all of this, and why they seem to struggle so much with it?
Well, certainly a political issue. I think that my personal opinion, from what I've seen over the years, obviously with the Democrats more being in favor of gun control, and Feinstein with all the stuff she's been behind, and all these bills that pop up as soon as a mass shooting happens or whatever, and then you have Republicans are typically against it as well. So they look like they are kind of defenders of Second Amendment. But the problem is when you have Republican control of Congress, right, presidency, and something happens, and then you still have some gun control stuff, again, like the bump stocks, right? That got passed under Trump's watch, okay? So it's not like no gun control happens under the Republicans as well. So, which definitely gets my antenna up there, because there are things that, a lot of people voted for Trump, gun owners, thinking that he was going to get national concealed carry, the reciprocity. If you had a permit, for example, here in Tennessee or whatever, it's good across the U.S. And it never happened, even when Republicans had control of Congress and all. So it makes me wonder, it's basically the same agenda. It's just a little slower. At least the Democrats tell you up front, they don't want you to own it, and what they're after, long game, right? And the Republicans will fight that tooth and nail until they are in position to take away, some of these anti-2A laws and everything, Same way with the Patriot Act. I mean, that came under Bush watch. And we've had Republicans in office since, and we still have a Patriot Act. All right. So There you go.
Well, thank you, because I mean, you know, my conspiracy side is always we're moving more toward communism, and I think it's always fascinating because you and I grew up in an era where you know it was you don't want to be a communist. Look what they're doing. You don't want big government. You don't want empty store shelves. But what do we have right now? Empty store shelves. You don't want to be having your weapons taken away, and what do we have? You know.
That's something honestly internally that really bothers me because I was reading something from the 80s, and now it looks like but it was about the Soviet Union at the time, and now with Patriot Act and all that stuff in modern day America, it looked like America now. Some of the things I was reading that we talked about the Soviet Union, how bad they were, and not allowing freedom and everything, and we handed that over, after 9/11. And a lot of things I read about nowadays, this reminds me about stuff I read about in the 80s, again, Soviet Union and how they held people back under that Iron Curtain. And you couldn't say this, couldn't do that. And the secret police, Bulgaria coming after you, and KGB and all these other things. And look at us now.
And man, I'm thinking as you're talking, I mean, let's keep it real. We already had to censor what we were going to say.
Yep.
Right now, it's still kind of like, I wonder if YouTube is going to take this video down just because, isn't it funny? You're showing guns behind you, but then I can go right now, pull up somebody's goofy shot with a cell phone hip hop video with some fool walking around like this, up there rapping with 5 million views. That'll get promoted right here on whether it's YouTube or wherever else, or we know movies, Walking Dead, things like that. But yet when you really want to talk about the issue and get right down to it, no, those things are too provocative. We can't have that discussion. Yeah. But as we get ready, close, because T-Real got to watch that basketball game. And I always say this is what I appreciate about you, young brother, is that you are willing to put yourself out there and have the debate. And I can't remember who made the statement. I think it was an economist that said, when I have new information, I change my mind. What do you do? Because people, especially in my line of work, it's like, folks be like, well, you can't change your mind. Well, I have new information. That's what I'm supposed to do. If you can,
I respect that.
So, I know you kind of said now that you've learned more, T-Real, I have my question for you, and then Damon, I want you to follow up with it. T-Real, what was probably one thing that did persuade you, or that you think would reach younger brothers such as yourself? And then Damon, what I want you to hit on after he's done is, now thinking of guys that are closer to our age that are still like, you know what, let's again keep it 100. My wife don't want me to have a gun in the house because of children, et cetera, et cetera. How would you talk to those guys and try to help them get through it? So, but first, T-Real, what really kind of was something maybe in the argument that you said, you know what, that's a good point I hadn't thought about, and now I'm willing to consider something?
It was when we addressed directly on the question of what would you do to limit the amount of gun violence, and the response was, well, we have 14 or 18,000 gun laws, and why aren't they being enforced? Right there is the matter of, oh, wait, that's what I'm looking for. Why is it not being enforced? Why is that not something that we're paying enough attention to? As a matter of fact, why are we not having those conversations across the mass media versus trying to remove them, right? What should we look more into these and maybe outline them? Maybe, okay, we don't need that one because we already have this, or blah, blah, blah. But that directly changed my perspective, especially it changing from state to state. That was another thing. It's like, well, how does that, work? And then I know obviously that goes really into politics there, but yeah.
Man, it's so weird. Like, I went out of town last week, and usually anytime I go out of town, I can take my pistol with me. This is the first time I went to a state where I couldn't even take a firearm.
Yeah, he was mad.
Yeah, it was so weird, and I was so uncomfortable just because I'm so used to traveling and having it there. I've never been to a state where they're like, no, you can't even have it. So, I don't know. I've seen it just from traveling to different states, how weird and like ineffective it is ineffective in my opinion. I don't know, just because I don't know, I'm a Tennessee boy. I guess I'm used to the country. I used to having guns.
Well, let me throw that in real quick before you go, Damon. Damon Jr., have you noticed young brothers? I mean, because you were right there at T Real's age. Have you noticed the other side? Are there more brothers legally that legally want to own weapons now? Because there's always been some around in their 20s that will own something, like you said earlier, they shouldn't have it. Are you noticing kind of a bit of a change? Or how are you? Let me ask this: how are young brothers with weapons compared to the young white guys with weapons?
So, just from my experience personally, a law changed here. I believe it was last June, to where you don't need your carry permit to carry anymore. So I have my carry permit. I got it when I turned 21, but a lot of my friends were actually very excited to be able to carry their firearm, like concealed carry, without a permit, because it's just less restrictions. You know, you don't have to go sit in an 8-hour course now just to carry your pistol legally, you know? So they felt like they had more freedom, you know? And they're not doing anything wrong. You know, they're walking around just concealed carrying, just for protection. You know, they're not going into schools and shooting up schools with a pistol. They're walking around with it, so they're protected. You know, so I have noticed that they're mainly responsible with them. They feel more comfortable having them in a state that has less restrictions. I have friends in Florida though. It's kind of the same way, except there's just the laws are a little different. Friends in California, I haven't heard anything about guns over there. Just because the way the laws are set up, I don't even think they really care for them over there. Just because of I think California's been like that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
New York, I know some people up there. I hear stories all the time. People still have guns. You feel me? They won't really show them as much, I guess, but they still have them. They're just not as open. It's like that everywhere. That's why I came with that one point earlier where I feel like people will still find the way to get them, just because like there's illegal attachments and stuff. Like how people have the full automatic like Glock switches and stuff in Chicago. That's extremely illegal. Extremely illegal. And there's people walking around with those all the time. There's tons of stories. People shooting up cars and drive-bys, shooting up houses and all that with Glock switches. Literally, they make it fully automatic. And those are floating all around Chicago right now. Literally all around Chicago.
Yeah, you can get them off of wish.com forever.
Yeah, you feel me? You can get them for $10 on the internet. So, I mean, my dad's point earlier of why certain things aren't being enforced, that I feel like that might actually be the root of the problem. That's what got my attention too. Because, I mean, there's all these gun laws. You know, if you're a felon, you can't legally buy a weapon, but you can still try, you know, and nothing happens. Like he said, literally nothing happens. You can try, they might deny you, but, you know, nothing happens. What's going to stop them from going on Facebook and finding someone that's advertising it as, you know, a toy gun, but really selling it as a real gun for $1,000, and then they go meet up with the person and buy it like that, you know? So I don't feel like anything is really gonna stop it, other than really cracking down on the main issue of why there's so many gun laws and literally nothing is being enforced. It's like they're trying to target one area and like one specific gun, and I don't know. I have a lot of questions. It really just doesn't make sense. I feel like there's a lot more to it.
All right, other Damon, what can guys do? My wife won't let me have one. She's worried about the kids in the house and what might happen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that us old guys have to often deal with.
Well, first, and this will tie in, is hey, much respect to you, Terrell. At no time do I mean no disrespect, you know, and you know, if we go back and forth and chop it up. So, and what I've learned is through these conversations, right? You know, after I mention certain things to people, or you know, or just get them looking in a different direction, or taking them to the range or whatever. Then they start realizing, hey, this AR-15 is not going to hop off the table and just start shooting people, or you know, whatever else. And then they're able to talk to their wife or invite their wife out to the range, whatever. Because deep down, you know, these older guys, you know, once you start getting a family and stuff, you know, and if you weren't really a gun guy growing up, you know, but you got that noise in the middle of the night and you have to go investigate whatever, and now you want a firearm. So I've had these conversations many times, and there's just so much crap by the media put out there about firearms, about laws, and that's a whole nother reason that people don't carry, because it makes this process sometimes so difficult that law-abiding citizens are just like, forget it, I'll just get one from my cousin and carry it, and it's like, man, you don't even have a record, but you got one, you can have one if you get caught, all you have to do is apply for the permit. Oh, it's too much trouble. Blah, blah. I've heard people say that to me, that it was too much trouble. Or attachments with an AR-15. They'll show me a picture of it. There's people in the military. And I'm like, hey, man, that's a stock. You can have a stock on that. That's less than 16-inch barrel, 14 and a half pin, permanently attached. And you got like a 10.5-inch barrel on there. You can only have a brace, and it's a pistol. You can't have a stock, okay? But they look similar, to the gun trained guy. These guys are like, well, I'm never going to the range with it. I just shoot it at my house. And to them, it was just like they're not even going through all that trouble. They're not bothering nobody, whatever else. But those are how our gun laws are, and they're so complicated. Selective how they're enforced. Things like that. Like my son was talking about the Glock switches and stuff. That should be something they should be out there after. They're abundant. Him and I went to a tactical shotgun course, and the trainer was telling us how the local PD out there had called him, was like, hey, it's kind of had a bad feeling about these. They don't look right. What are these? It was like, where did you get them? We caught one of these guys, pulled them over, and they had drugs or whatever else. And he's like, yeah, that makes it full auto. The cops didn't even know what they were, with these Glock switches on the back. So, and they've been showing me videos on TV and stuff where cops are raiding houses, and these guys, blasting back now with a Glock 17, Glock 19, and they're full auto. Yeah.
So as we get ready to close, we're right up against time. Can you touch on one thing that we were talking about right when I joined in, and right before we started, and y'all were talking about training. So if you have that guy, he is looking to kind of get into it, but he's like me. He's like, you know what? I don't have any background with weapons. And I got to touch on this because especially knowing my audience, again, Black men, one place we do not feel comfortable. I think we say the same thing that you hear, and I've heard this, and I've thought this myself, of like people going to the gym. I don't like going to the gym because I feel intimidated. The one thing in the gym, at least, nobody really knows whether you've been there or not, but certainly when you walk into certain gun places, and I've even heard real OGs such as yourself going into white establishments to the gun range, etc., and knowing how the white guys kind of give them that look until they see what you're doing. How can training and getting past all of that anxiety, what would be some of your tips with that?
Well, Damon Jr.'s got to see a lot of that over the years with us going to shoot. Some of it's stereotype, and it's going to happen. You just have ignorant people. He's seeing me open carrying, and a white guy looked down at my pistol, and I got him and Brittany next to me coming from the range. He looked and think I'm robbing the store. I got a button-up shirt on, mags in, pistol pouches, shirts tucked in. Yes, sir. No, sir. To people. He takes off running, looking back.
Running full speed.
Full speed.
Wow. And you didn't have a hoodie on or nothing.
Nothing, man. I had a U.S. Army, we call it like 3-button shirts up. Yeah. So
what do you call it? In with an army shirt and a gun? No,
kids, can't forget the kids.
Right, and kids. And kids too. Kids.
Oh yeah, I got them two. They were younger at the time, right next to me. This dude ran all the way, looking back, almost stumbling over his feet. And that's just one, man. He's seen it when we go to the range, and I guess to be expecting we're gonna come up there and pull out some high points and Lorson 380s or something out there, and they looking at us like, ask my son. They always ask, "Where are those Pelican cases? Where you get that from?" And they looking, see me, him pulling out suppressors and stuff like that. They're not used to seeing that. Unfortunately, when we go to range, and we as Black people, you see the videos on the gram and stuff like that with these folks doing stupid stuff, you know, they go get a Draco and go to range and, you know, doing dumb stuff too. So that don't help it. You know what I'm saying? So I would advise anyone, white, black, male, female, whatever, and I do it as well. And my son, we're constantly training, you know, and I'm never to the point where I think I know it all. So like, you know, I noticed my son was a little weak on the shotgun stuff because we, you know, been through a lot of combat pistol and stuff. And it was like, hey, you need to, you know, learn how to run that shotgun better. So I had already been through shotgun 1, shotgun 2, and then he went through it. And it seriously boosted his confidence in running that shotgun. And that was important though, because again, that was just another tool, right? For him to be, you know, in his arsenal, and I don't mean arsenal like guns, but of weapons, you know, and it's just why he trains Muay Thai and everything else as well, because it is a tool, you know. You got to do more than just, you know, jujitsu, all right? You know, you're doing a lot of fighting before you go to the ground, all right? But once you go to the ground, you got to know how to fight too, all right? Same way, you know, with your firearm, knife, you know, he's been knife fighting classes, stick fighting as well too. So they're tools. So whatever it is, you know, for yourself or listeners, whatever, is Terrell, as I was saying, is find a competent firearms instructor, all right, and at least I say once a year. I mean, to me, that's like the bare minimum that I try to do. We usually, you know, we go throughout the year, but a lot of trainers I know that, you know, they make sure they're a student as well in someone's classroom once a year, because, you know, there are things that we, you know, you're constantly learning, evolving, and you know, there may be a faster way to do something, or, you know, you develop a training scar, so someone to pick up, and you know, we need to be evaluated, and you know, you always want to learn. You know, you don't just have Uncle Joe train you because he was in the military. Those people are dangerous, you know, and those ones in being at the range and everything else. So find a competent instructor. I'll be happy to help any of you all locate someone from different gun groups, whatever, and know quite a few, Georgia, Florida, all that stuff. So, and you know, I can look out in the Arizona way, but that's where you're gonna find. Same thing I told Sheila, right? You know, gave her a recommendation, but then I started constantly pushing training to her and different resources and all. You know, she's got Gunsight. There's Gunsight out there. AZ, Jeff Cooper's old place. So, you know, that is like the mecca for firearm training right there. So, you know, available to her. And that's why I'm saying, hey, go check them out and everything. So
cool, thank you. And real quick, are there any particular, you mentioned Naga, but are there any particular gun groups, especially black gun groups, that you would feel comfortable even saying, you know what, I may be okay with supporting them or signing up with them? Or are there none that you would recommend personally?
I can't say in particular, because you got different groups that have chapters in other places and all. I would look for a competent instructor. I mean, once you know what to look for, or what you're comfortable working with, then I would kind of venture off into, you know, if you feel more comfortable, you want to be in Naga or, you know, urban sharpshooters or this type of instructor or that. I'll say go get the training first, because you don't know what you don't know. All right. So, and honestly, there are many instructors out there that, you know, they're not that good. They all had an NRA cert and everything else. And I've taken some of those courses, and by some of these people, they're not that good. You know, I go in there open-minded and everything else. I'll still pay my money, run through it. All right. And, you know, I just try to find something to throw in my kit bag from them that, you know, try to find something. Sometimes it's harder, you know, than others to really find something to take home, you know, that was worthwhile at the course. So, you know, every trainer isn't equal, that's for sure.
Thank you. So as we get ready to close, any last words? Damon Jr., I'll start with you. Any last words before we close? And T-Rail, and then Big Damon, you can close us out.
Sure.
No, I actually learned a lot just from listening and taking in everybody's opinions and their thoughts. Actually, I didn't know that there were that many gun laws imposed. I didn't know we had 18,000. I've just been sitting here listening, but yeah, I've heard a lot of good ideas and stuff. I don't really have too much to add, but yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
All right, man. Well, thank you, brother. We sure appreciate you joining us. Even though you don't want to show your face, that's all right. You might be in the bathroom or something. It's all good. Your mic sound tight though, bro. Let me tell you, your mic sound good. Mic sound real good on point.
Thank you. I would like to definitely do some more because I feel like there's a lot more we could touch up on for sure.
Yes, I want to keep this on going because I think black men especially need to keep this conversation happening for sure.
I feel like a lot of people just really need the education. That's really all it is. It's pretty much like anything else. You're really not going to know much about it unless you really get out there and meet a lot of people that really have the education and experience behind it. Because, like, I understand. I mean, guns can be dangerous in a sense, but I don't believe it's the guns that's the problem. I feel like it's the people that are using them and the intentions they have behind using them. Because not everyone that carries a gun is, coming with bad intentions. You feel me? So I do feel like, it's a really sensitive topic to really speak on. A lot of people, have their own opinions, but I don't know. I do feel like what you guys brought up was a really good point. Why do we have all these gun laws and rules and regulations if literally nothing is being enforced? So, yeah, that's pretty much what I'm taking away from it. I've really been thinking about that the whole time.
Good, man. Word up. T-Real, what you got to close us out?
Nothing much other than always appreciating the wisdom and knowledge being shared. I already knew who I was, what I was getting into, who I was talking to. So I was already just posing questions that I had and having them open-ended on purpose. So then I would be able to get as much information as possible. And then okay, because I can ask, maybe peers or so that one may be licensed carrier, right? But come from maybe the same type of thought process that I do. So, but over the years and growing up, I've thought about having more tools to go to in my tool bag anyway, and not just, having a gun in general, right? So, yeah, those are my closing thoughts.
That might be a future show right there. We went to talk to guns, obviously, with what's happening, but Damon, that might be one that we have you on as the expert. You're going to be our resident expert now. That's you all the way. So that might be, what are those tools between having a conversation and a gun? There's a lot in between there, and I would love for you to come back and expound on that. But close us out, man. What would you like to close us out? Any last comment?
All right, hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Enjoyed the dialogue, and glad to see my son on here. All right.
Yes.
I just got to say, hey, find some good training. You just don't go buy a firearm. You have to get some training. Find you a good instructor, okay? Because my son's heard me say many times, right? You can't make a mistake once. I tell him that all the time. Like, there's no oops, because that one oops, okay, you ND, that round is going somewhere, all right? And it may kill somebody. So there's no just, I'm having a bad day, or I really didn't know, and the government shouldn't have to mandate a bunch of training, for you as a firearms owner to go get, for you to exercise that right. You have a duty as a firearms owner, okay, to know how to operate that tool. So go get some training, and you got to remember, you may have to use that tool one day. Okay, I'm not going into detail now, but you're welcome to look it up with the Supreme Court ruling on police duty, to protect you. There was a ruling not too long ago on that. Very interesting. A lot of people think, because they call the cops have to, come defend them and do everything else. So, you are responsible to protect yourself. And a part of that, again, with a firearm is more to it than just owning it, but learn how to use it and use it effectively.
Man, I definitely appreciate all y'all, man. That's on point. That, especially what you just said and what's coming out of Texas right now is like, oh, now I heard the police are like, nope, we shutting up. We're not even going to talk anymore because folks wondering like, how come y'all didn't go in and do anything? So, and there's a lot of tragedy behind that one. I do have to say something that I have observed though, as we close. We've talked for about, I know over an hour. And do you know that not one of those guns went off by themselves? I mean, that's so incredible, man. I heard that all the time when I was growing up. We can't have no guns in the house because, they just go off and, or a kid does do something. I got to admit, it will be doing something. It's like, it just went off by itself. And then people say, that's why I don't want to own one. They just be going. I can't believe, man, everything you got behind you, man, nothing just popped off. So I guess you must be right, man. You must know what you're talking about. Either that or you got super extra safeties on your stuff. I don't know.
Super extra.
Right, super extra safeties. Or they just ain't real. That's what it is. They ain't real. They're not real, YouTube. They're not real. Those are all cap guns he got behind them, YouTube. So don't take my video down.
It's the only one not real.
With that, we gonna close it out for real. I appreciate y'all, brothers, as always. Thank y'all for the conversation. And if you got something out of it, please like, subscribe, share the video. Let's keep this conversation going. Definitely promote the channel and share this with somebody, especially some brothers that may be on the fence and kind of worried about whether they should own a weapon and they're having issues with this, whether it's conversations at home or in other places or even with themselves on whether it's a step that they want to take. So I want to thank y'all with that. And until next time, y'all, peace.
Peace.
Bye.